Miracle treatment. Imagine waking up one day and realizing something strange is growing on your face, and it has a life of its own. That's exactly what happens to Rose. A young fashion designer whose life turns into a nightmare after a horrible accident leaves her disfigured. Desperate, she agrees to take part in an experimental treatment with skin grafts and tissue made from stem cells. The procedure is led by Dr. William Burroughs, who promises miraculous results. And yes, her looks do improve, but the price is steep. A parasite begins to grow on Rose's face, along with an uncontrollable hunger. Every time she attacks someone, her victims are infected with a kind of mutant rabies that transforms them in just minutes. While chaos spreads, eccentric fashion designer Gunter decides Rose will make her big fashion debut on the runway, using her best friend Chelsea as the main model. Brad, Rose's ex-boyfriend, suddenly reappears in her life, but by then the outbreak is already spiraling out of control. Chelsea kills Gunter and ends up shot by the police. Desperate, Rose and Brad go looking for Dr. Burroughs to understand what's happening, but the visit turns into a trap. He locks them up and reveals the tissue used came from his own wife, his first test subject. She had cancer, died, and became a mindless living mass. Burroughs' plan is to keep Rose and her parasite, which he believes holds the secret to immortality. But she fights back, cuts off the monstrous appendage, and apparently dies along with Brad, only for Rose to wake up again. Burroughs, without a shred of mercy, announces that he's going to keep her locked up for research, now that the epidemic has been cured. The Fly. Would you step into a machine that promises to teleport your body to another place in seconds? Seth Brundle, a brilliant but eccentric scientist, not only did it but also turned it into his greatest invention, the telepods. They worked perfectly with objects, but had one major issue with living matter, the kind of issue that could turn a baboon inside out. After fine-tuning and endless testing, Seth finally manages to teleport a live animal without any harm. Then comes the fatal mistake. He decides to test it on himself. What he doesn't notice is that a fly sneaks into the pod with him. At first, it feels like an upgrade in life. Superhuman strength, insane energy, physical performance beyond normal. But soon strange signs appear. Thick hairs growing on his back, fingernails falling off, aggressive behavior, and a bizarre hunger that makes him vomit digestive acid onto food. The brutal truth hits: the computer fused Seth's DNA with the fly's. From that point on, he slowly transforms into Brundlefly, a human-insect hybrid, more disgusting and less human by the day. Desperate, Seth comes up with a wild plan to fix the error, fuse himself with the woman he loves, Ronnie, and the baby she's carrying, to create a perfect being. But the experiment fails and he mutates into an even more grotesque monster. Part man, part fly, part machine. In his final moments, he begs Ronnie to end his suffering. Crying, she grants his wish and kills him. The Parasite. What if you woke up in a town where almost every single person was connected to the mind of an alien monster? That's exactly what happens in Slither. It all begins when a meteorite crashes in Wheelsey, a quiet town in South Carolina. Out of it comes an extraterrestrial parasite that infects Grant, a wealthy local man. The creature takes over his body and mind, and Grant begins to transform into a tentacle-covered monster. As if that wasn't gross enough, he also kidnaps a woman named Brenda and uses her as an incubator for the alien larvae. Grant's wife Starla realizes something is very wrong. When he tries to attack her, the police step in, but Grant escapes. During the manhunt, Sheriff Bill and his team find Brenda, now grotesquely swollen. Then she explodes, releasing dozens of slugs that crawl into people and turn them into part of a hive mind controlled by Grant. Something far worse than just dying. His goal is to consume everything and everyone, though. In a twisted way, he still loves Starla and wants her by his side. The survivors figure out the only way to stop the plague is by killing Grant. The final showdown happens at his house, where his body is already fused with multiple infected hosts. Amid tentacles, gunfire, and pure disgust, Starla and Bill manage to pump the monster full of gas and blow him up, killing all the infected at once. The Tusk. Imagine waking up and realizing someone cut off your leg, and that's just the start of the nightmare. That's what happens in Tusk, when Wallace, an arrogant, self-absorbed podcaster, travels to Canada chasing a bizarre story and ends up meeting Howard Howe, a seemingly friendly ex-sailor with a screw loose. After drinking drugged tea, Wallace wakes up trapped, missing his leg, and gets fed the absurd excuse that he was bitten by a poisonous spider. But the truth is much worse. Howard wants to turn him into a walrus, literally. The project involves sewing Wallace inside a suit made of human skin with tusks carved from the bones of his amputated legs. As the surgeries and continue, his sanity dissolves until his mind is completely reprogrammed to believe he is a walrus. Howard, obsessed with the animal that once saved his life, reenacts a final showdown with Mr. Tusk, using Wallace as a stand-in, and loses, killed by the massive improvised tusks. When Wallace's friends finally arrive, they don't find a man, but a grotesque creature grunting and living like an animal. And the worst part? A year later, he's still trapped in that deformed body, living in isolation at a wildlife reserve, fed only out of pity. He still cries, which suggests some part of the man survives inside, but that's exactly what makes his fate crueler. It's not just about being turned into a monster, it's being forced to feel and remember who you used to be. In this case, death would have been an act of mercy. Identity change. The skin I live in creates a nightmare that goes beyond death itself, exploring the complete destruction of identity. Vicente, a young man accused by Robert, a renowned plastic surgeon, of his daughter, is kidnapped and subjected to a meticulous and inhuman plan for revenge. Instead of killing him, Robert keeps him alive but begins a series of irreversible surgeries. First, a gender reassignment, then body and facial modifications that physically transform him into a woman named Vera. The suffering isn't just physical. It shatters the mind and the very sense of self. Vicente remains fully conscious, carrying memories and the feeling of who he was, but trapped in a body he doesn't recognize as his own. Robert completes his twisted masterpiece by grafting on artificial skin grown in a lab, erasing the last trace of the man he had kidnapped. With each intervention, Vicente is forced to adapt to his new appearance, to live as Vera, and endure the daily humiliation of watching his old identity disappear forever. The prison is absolute, locked away, monitored, and deprived of any human contact that doesn't go through Robert's manipulation. Even his attempts to escape or resist become pointless under the surgeon's control. In this context, death would almost be a relief, but Robert's punishment is to keep Vicente alive, forcing him to exist in a reality where the body is a prison and the mirror is an enemy. When Vicente finally manages to kill his captor and escape, returning to his old life is impossible. When he finds his mother, nobody recognizes him. All he can do is declare through tears the impossible truth. He was Vicente. Here, the horror doesn't end with freedom, because the greatest punishment is living forever as someone you're not. The human centipede. There are horrors that death can't even touch, and the human centipede is pretty much a handbook for that. Lindsay and Jenny, two American tourists in Germany, end up asking for help at the worst house possible, that of Dr. Joseph Heider, a retired surgeon with a very disturbing hobby. The man, once famous for separating conjoined twins, now wants to do the opposite, create a single organism by joining people from mouth to the rear. After killing a kidnapped victim who didn't fit his plan, Heider completes his trio of captives with Katsuro, a Japanese tourist. The surgery is brutal, teeth removed, ligaments cut so they can't walk, mouths sewn to, well, you know, all of it so they share one digestive system. Lindsay, who had tried to escape, is punished by being placed in the middle, the most humiliating and painful position of all. The aftermath is even more inhuman. Heider trains his centipede like an animal, whipping, insulting, and forcing them to crawl. There's no privacy, no dignity, no trace of humanity left. Their bodies become prisons and tools for torture. Even when death starts closing in, like with Jenny, the suffering doesn't end. Surrounded by the corpses of her companions and with no way out, Lindsay remains alive, stitched up, alone, with the certainty that if she doesn't die soon, she'll go on existing in that unbearable state. And that's where the human centipede hits its most disturbing core. Death would be a release, but it doesn't come. There's only the sound of Lindsay's sobs echoing in an endless void. The Thing. Imagine being stuck at an isolated base in Antarctica, cut off from the outside world, surrounded by nothing but endless snow, and then discovering that something among you can perfectly imitate any living being, cell by cell. It all begins with what looks like an innocent dog brought to the American researchers, but by nightfall, it mutates into a mess of tentacles and pulsating flesh, absorbing the other dogs. What they discover later is even scarier. This alien creature doesn't just kill, it becomes whoever it kills. A colleague, a friend, even yourself. No one can tell the difference. That's where the real horror sets in. It's not just the risk of dying, it's living without knowing if the person next to you is still human or if you're not anymore. Being infected means losing all consciousness, being replaced by something that acts and speaks exactly like you but isn't you. Your body becomes a perfect shell for a cosmic parasite, while your mind ceases to exist forever. It's total erasure, silent and impossible to detect until it's too late. By the climax, it doesn't even matter anymore who's human and who's not. Pilot McCready and Childs end up sitting together in the freezing cold, staring at each other, knowing that maybe one or both of them is already the thing. No certainty, no hope, just waiting for the end or the next transformation. And that's the part that really freezes your blood. Death is clear and final, but the thought that you could keep walking, talking, laughing without actually being you, that's a fate far crueler. The Blob. What if you were swallowed alive by something that doesn't chew, doesn't bite, but simply dissolves you, all while you're still conscious? Yeah, the blob doesn't spare anyone. It all starts when a meteorite crashes near a quiet little town. A local finds a sticky pink goo that, in seconds, starts devouring his hand. But it's not just the skin or flesh it wants all of you. The victim is taken to the hospital, but the blob grows, swallows his entire body, and melts him from the inside out, leaving behind nothing but, well, nothing. The most disturbing part isn't just physical death, but the fact that the blob isn't quick. It engulfs the person, traps them, and the body literally dissolves while the victim tries to scream, suffocating with no way out. It's like being erased from existence slowly and painfully. And worse, it doesn't matter who you are, an athlete, a kid, even the town sheriff. The blob can pull you through a sink drain, drag you across a movie theater floor, or suck you under an entire building. And with every victim, it grows bigger. The ultimate terror is knowing there's no bargaining, no chance of survival if you get caught. There's no antidote, only one weakness: extreme cold. Until then, you're just another meal. In the end, they freeze the creature, but a tiny piece survives, kept in a jar, waiting for the right time to return. Antiviral. Have you ever imagined a world where viruses and diseases are valuable? Don't worry, you'll get it in a second. Sid March works at the Lucas Clinic. The company sells celebrity diseases to fans who want to feel closer to their idols. He's the type who loves shortcuts. He uses his own body to incubate pathogens and sells them on the black market. One day, he's assigned to collect blood from the clinic's biggest star, Hannah Geist. She's sick, but instead of following the plan, Sid injects himself with her blood. Soon, the fever and hallucinations begin. The console he uses to crack the virus's security breaks in the process. The next day, he learns that Hannah has died. Her illness becomes the hottest thing to sell. Levine, a black market dealer, discovers Sid is carrying the deadly virus and forces him to give blood samples. But Hannah isn't really dead. She's hidden away, terminally ill, exploited by rival companies. Sid finds out he's been infected with a modified version of one of her past illnesses. The virus is designed to be impossible to analyze. Things only get worse. Levine kidnaps him to broadcast his death in a twisted reality show. Sid escapes and discovers that the company Vole and Tesser infected Hannah on purpose to profit from a patented pathogen. He strikes a deal and starts working for them. In the end, Hannah becomes a grotesque cell garden. Sid keeps selling viruses extracted from her. In one of the most disturbing moments, he slices off one of Hannah's grown limbs and drinks the blood. Living in that world turned out to be far worse than simply dying. So, which of these fates did you find the most tragic? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and check out the next video showing up on your screen right now. See you there.